Welcome back to We Know Scripted TV, where today we know Star Wars Skeleton Crew episodes 1 and 2. My name is Grace, but of course, I'm not alone. I'm very excited to have claimed claimsies on this person. It's Owen Knight. Owen, how are you doing?
I'm great, Grace. That's great. You called claimsies a new law here in the Star Wars verse, but very excited to be here. I had a blast watching these first two episodes and was flattered to get the text from you asking if I would be down to cover the show. And yeah, happy to be here.
Yeah, so you and I are going to be covering Star Wars Skeleton Crew weekly. Each episode, they dropped the first two episodes earlier this week on Monday. We're a little probably later getting into your feed than we will be moving forward. Unless there's unforeseen circumstances like we get stuck in a Starship Trooper and get blasted off into space. But I think you made a very good point before we started, which is perhaps before we even get into whether or not we enjoyed the episode and whether we should encourage people to watch it, we should probably give our Star Wars credentials, in fact, and where our fandom of Star Wars comes from. And I'll turn it over to you first, Owen. What's your Star Wars fandom?
I do feel pretty qualified to be here. When you asked, like, are you a Star Wars person? I was like, absolutely. So I had the original trilogy on VHS growing up. And as an only child, I watched them quite frequently. A New Hope being one of the movies I've seen the most in my entire life. I'm probably close to 100 times at this point, and I love all three. And seeing the prequels in the theater when they came out, I think I was in about fifth grade when Phantom Menace came out, and I've just loved Star Wars my whole life. That's just the whole wonder of it and the hero's journey. And as you get older, you start realizing some of the political undertones and the messaging and just like how the story unfolded in the parallels with Vietnam, and just so much that is said by George Lucas in the writing, and these bigger themes there that you don't fully grasp when you're a child. It's beautiful. And yeah, some of my favorites, I mean, Rogue One, elite movie, and it's been fun to share with Sammy as well. She wasn't as much of a Star Wars kid growing up, but getting her into The Mandalorian kind of as an entry point and helping her find this world and watching all the movies with her, all the new shows. So it's just a blast, and just I'm so grateful that as an adult they just continue to produce shows, and I think we're on to a good one here. How about you?
Yeah, so for me, I think this is a really good there has to be balance within the Force, and I am not a childhood Star Wars fan. I would just give this caveat that I feel almost bad saying it, but I just wasn't. The prequel movies came out when I was younger, and I definitely watched them, but was not like, oh my God, I must then watch all the Star Wars. And the thing is my family wasn't a big movie household. I grew up in a very small town where the closest movie theater was about 30 minutes like out of town. Like a town of like 600 people is the type of town. So we didn't even have a stoplight, we're tiny. And it was called Atten. Was the town I grew up in. Nobody knew about
it. It's not even on a map. It's just a legend.
It's not even, yeah. So really though, when I went to university, somebody was like, you've never watched Star Wars? And I was like, I've never watched the original movies. And so I watched them. And I think that if people have listened to me on podcasts before, you will realize that like literally one of the podcasts I do on We Know Scripted TV is the Tastemakers, where we watch as much television as possible and then tell people whether or not to watch it. So I think people can probably guess I'm a little bit of like a culture vulture. And I feel like as an adult, I feel like I need to constantly fill in these like pop culture gaps. And so Star Wars was one of them. And as soon as I watched it, I was like, oh yeah, like I get it. And almost in the way in which sometimes when you watch older media in the modern day, you can be a little like turned off by it, a little like, I understand that it's good, but like, it looks outdated. I know people who are like, I don't watch anything black and white. Not that Star Wars is black and white, but just this like I don't know. For me, that was not it. I really loved everything about it, and then really fell in love with Star Wars from there. But what I think really, really got me was the back-to-back thing of The Force Awakens and then The Mandalorian. And for me, there is such it's talking about such big themes. It's like rebellion and like fascism, but under the guise of like lightsabers and spaceships.
Right.
And so I don't know. And then for me, really like The Mandalorian, like this trope of the wolf and the cub, I think is the name of this trope, where it's an adult escorting a child, really, really works for me. Some of my favorite media, and I'm a huge coming of age person. So Star Wars Skeleton Crew is like, okay, this is like I think this will hit. And I'm very happy to say, after 2 episodes, I am quite loving this, Owen.
Me too. Yeah, I'm a sucker for coming of age stories myself, and I'm a little embarrassed because I didn't realize how soon it was coming out when you reached out, and I was like, wait, what? And then I watched the trailer, and immediately I was like, oh my god, like this is in my wheelhouse big time. Like I can't even think of movies or books off the top of my head, but just that narrative and just like the way coming of age stories make me feel. Like I don't know, there's a niche movie, The Way Back, for example, where Steve
I've
Carell
seen The
plays
Way
this
Back.
kid. Oh, love, yeah. See, that's randomly one of my favorite movies ever. I don't know. There's something about these stories that just really, I don't know if it like, not to use a Star Wars term, but it really awakens like this like childlike kind of wistfulness or like like anything is possible kind of thing. And yeah, this show definitely scratches the itch. And yeah, I'm excited to break it down and let people know if they should check it out, which, spoiler alert, like they should for sure.
Yeah, I'm a big I really love coming of age stories, and what I think I really find fascinating about them is like for me it's a lot of like nature versus nurture stuff of
Mhm.
if you have great parents or bad parents, not bad, but like parents who are maybe a little bit misguided. There's a lot of parental stuff in this episode, in the first 2 episodes already. Um, but at what point are like the decisions that you make, are you solely responsible for them versus the way in which like things have happened to you? And there's this like innocence to it, but also at this time of like exploring innocence. I was a camp director as well. And I was literally just having a
Mhm.
conversation with a friend of mine named Josh Wigger yesterday, and we were talking about like we don't have children, but the impact we can have on children. And so, like I really like my nieces, like what kind of like we went to see Wicked, and as soon as the movie's over, I'm like, so do you understand the point of Wicked? Like, do you understand the point of it? Is like don't judge. And we had watched The Wizard of Oz the day before, and she was like,
Oh, nice.
that witch is really ugly. And I was like, oh my god, I can't wait. We're going to Wicked, and you're gonna learn like exactly why you said that thing is like it's such part of the story. So I really do love coming of age stories, and this one for me is working so far. It's very cute. This little like ragtag group of kids. So this is what the story is, just to set it up. If you haven't watched it, is we're gonna meet 4 young kids who live in basically Star Wars suburbs, Owen, which is a new thing for me.
Yeah,
Who
I
yeah,
loved it. I loved it. It looked like California in Star Wars world.
it's so funny. It's such an interesting, it's such a fun setting. But we won't be there for long because they're going to end up on a spaceship that's going to take them mistakenly away from their home planet. And they're going to try to figure out how to come back. And they will eventually be assisted in that endeavor through the help of one Jude Law, who we will talk about his character. I believe it's been advertised that he's a Jedi, but I'll just say I'll just rip the band-aid off that he's a Jedi. I get a little nervous, Owen, about like plot versus premise. So, like, did I just spoil the end of the second episode? But whatever. He's a Jedi.
But it was in the premise. I think they described him, his character, as a Force user. So we'll see what the backstory is, and we'll dive into that more when we get to the reveal later. But
That's true.
yeah,
Maybe he's not even a Jedi. Maybe he's just a Force user.
we'll find out.
So yeah, I really loved it. If you haven't checked, so I do feel like, oh, and the sentiment that I keep hearing from people is like, should I watch that? And
Yeah.
I I do feel like, oh, and that comes from a little bit of people feeling a little bit spurned by the end of that new trilogy. People
Mhm.
weren't super high on the Acolyte. Obi-Wan and Ahsoka being like just mixed results,
Mhm.
mixed company. Um, but I feel like it's yes is my answer, but I'm wondering what, you know, you think.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, and I don't know if I was skeptical because it's funny just because to me Star Wars fans and Survivor fans have something big in common in that they both hate their product so much and yet they love it so much, and they love it so much that they are willing to be vocally extremely critical of the media they're consuming. And I was nervous when I was like, oh, it's about kids, like, spoiler alert, I'm 32 now. Like, I'm not a child. Like, this isn't necessarily for me, but it's still for me, And so I was holding a tiny bit of a grain of salt, but at the same time, like, it didn't feel too kiddie. It didn't feel too pandering. Like, it just happened that these protagonists are children, but it didn't feel like it was dumbed down to a 7-year-old audience. You know what I mean? So I do respect the skepticism that some people had, and I can understand why they thought it might not be for them. But um, if you love Star Wars, it just scratches so many itches in terms of what you're looking for, like the aliens, the just the little bikes that they have, just like the world building, like it is really satisfying in that sense. So yeah, I hope people can get past that and give it a shot because I think they'll be pleasantly surprised. And I was also pleasantly surprised by the reception it seems to be getting, at least on Blue Sky, where it is much more positive than Twitter in general. But people seem to be really enjoying it and kind of along our same kind of line of thought here that it's just fun. Like it's just if you can not take it too seriously. Even if you are taking it seriously, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. But if you're willing to just let yourself enjoy it, I think you really will.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's very funny. It's pretty cute, but it doesn't really hold back. I mean, the first scene is a pretty epic, Star Wars, battle scene. Somebody gets shot
Hmm.
in the eye, I believe, in the, the very
Hmm.
first scene
Yeah.
of the show. So it doesn't hold back. I think I was thinking about as scenes are happening in one of the episodes because this is a show that I definitely want my niece to watch. I messaged my brother. I think she should check it out and would like to watch it with her. And as I'm then watching it, I'm like, oh, like this scene,
Oh.
if they go in a certain direction, I don't know. And then I feel like it has such a good balance between um, being like a kid show, but also feeling like you're kind of getting away with watching something. I actually think Disney has done a pretty good job with these. I don't know if you watched the Percy Jackson show, but that's another one that I feel like they're kind of nailing. I think both. I think they're really nailing like kid content that's sort of like for like kids between like the ages of like 8 and 14. I guess and up
Mm-hmm.
that can watch this type of stuff. Percy Jackson was good. The Rotten Tomatoes headline is a breath of fresh air for Star Wars fans,
Let's
I believe is
go.
what it says, which I think that does feel right. And it currently has a 95% critic score and an 86% popcorn score. So, early
Love it.
days, but I think that feels about right.
It's
All
promising.
right. Yeah.
Promising.
All right. If you're listening to us and you don't want to make sure you want to make sure you don't miss an episode, make sure you subscribe to the We Know Scripted TV feed, or there is a We Know Star Wars feed where this episode will drop as well. So you can search for any of those in your podcast app of choice. We'll also release the videos on YouTube. And we know scriptedtv.com will also get you all the links. So make sure you're subscribed. It's very helpful for us. And tell a friend if you're watching Star Wars Skeleton Crew that they can listen to us chat about it as well. All right, I love to ask this question, Owen, which is, what's your headline as we get into like full spoiler, full show spoilers? What's the headline for you?
I think the headline for me is just like excitement, adventure. Like I'm excited to see what happens next. The lovable characters off on a wild adventure. The kid actors are doing a great job. I mean, Neil, we could do a whole episode about how adorable Neil is. And I just it's just like jolly. I don't know. I don't know if just the pirate vernacular is leaking in right now, but the headline's getting long. But it's just a fun ride so far, and I'm excited to see where it goes.
Well,
What's yours? You might
well,
be
yeah,
better at making a succinct headline.
I think for me, this show doesn't work if you don't have this like crew of 4 kids. That like if these kids are, and some people might disagree, but if you found them annoying or if like they're just not pulling it off, child actors is a tough thing to try to like make work. And I feel like undoubtedly this does. I feel like we have 4 very distinct characters in our little crew. I play a lot of D&D, Owen, but I also was
Mhm.
starting to play this game that's called Kids on Bikes that's heavily inspired by Stranger Things. And I feel
Mm.
like I can see where these kids are like they're like 4 characters from this thing where that game like pulls like tropes, but then you like kind of create your own character within that trope. And you certainly have like I think the main character here in Wim who is sort of perfect to be our like most central focused character, who is a kid that like I think like a lot of us is like kind of forgot that they have a test today or tomorrow, and dreams of being a Jedi and has his head in the clouds a little bit in a way that I really I really feel like Wendell, his dad, is a little unfair to him and sometimes a little
Yes.
mean.
Yes.
But I really liked Wim as basically like our entry point into this show.
100. I mean, it opens with him, I believe, literally playing with Star Wars action figures
That's
in
right.
Star Wars, and just like how meta that was. But it's like, if you think about this, he's a child who grew up hearing stories about the rebellion and about how this ragtag bunch of rebels came together and Luke Skywalker blew up the Death Star, and like, he's reading his little Star Wars iPad under the covers, and it's just like, what kid hasn't had those dreams of like saving the world, right? And so I found it relatable. And yes, certainly there were times where I'm like, oh, he's being annoying, or why did he storm off like that? But then it's like, oh yeah, he's a child. So
He's a child.
it's I think it balanced really well. But I thought the parental interaction, we teased this a little bit in the first part of our conversation, but it was a little strong in terms of how much of a jerk Wendell was being towards him. And as we're adults now, we can probably relate. Like, oh, it seems like single parent working a stressful job, his kid is running off missing his test. Like, yeah, that would be annoying. But you would hope to see a little bit more empathy there in certain scenes. But I didn't realize that the actor who plays his dad is from TV on the radio. When I went down my Wikipedia research, I was like, whoa, like I listened to them a lot back in the day. That's funny.
Yeah, this is Tunde Adebimpe. He's really, I mean, he's really good. He's well acted. But when he's like, I think you're a little old for a story before bed. I'm like, oh man,
Oh yeah,
harsh.
that was like brutal from the top rope. Yeah, that was harsh.
Yeah. I feel like I'm gonna keep saying balance, and I know that's like, there's balance in the force. It's the whole point of the show. Maybe I'm now like realizing why they've created this little, there's 4 kids, so it's even 2 boys, 2 girls.
Hmm.
But I do think the standout of the show is Wim's counterpart in Neil, who is a little elephant boy,
Space Elephant Boy, yeah, with his comb over.
telling other aliens that they look weird. I love Neil.
Yes.
Neil, nothing bad can happen to Neil, Owen.
No, not at all. Not at all. I saw many a tweet, many a ski just about like, if anything happens to Neil, I will riot. And he's just so adorable. Just like seems like this sweet, earnest, like, kind of the goody two shoes trope, but just like pure. And you can't help but smile. I don't know. We loved him. Sammy loved him. Like, he's a great character, and his cute little family. There is, they planted those seeds of a little bit of jealousy between Wim and Neil. Like, Neil's got his younger siblings and 2 parents, and they're all watching TV together and hanging out. And Wim's a latchkey kid who is left at home while his dad's at work, and there's some uh, desire for Wim to have Neil's family life. But yeah, Neil is just, the character design is great, so cute, just like his crush on his classmate, just all this stuff is just so just funny and adorable.
I mean, this feels pretty classic. Actually, one thing I've been thinking about with television a lot is if I look at the things that have been done really well recently, they're often like a version of something we've seen, but with an entirely new take on it. So I was thinking about like
Mm.
Shogun, being
Mhm.
like, people were like, Japanese Game of
Love,
Thrones. You're like, yeah, kind of
love
like, yeah,
Shogun.
but yeah, Shogun was quite incredible. You have Baby Reindeer, which is like, I think, not it's not entirely new material, but it does feel new. There's just this like the new iteration of this, and this to me, I feel like fits in this. Star Wars is so good at creating small creatures who people instantly fall in love with. I mean,
Yep.
Grogu was undoubtedly like such a success. And now you have Neil. I'm a huge Babu Frick fan.
Oh, yep.
Um,
Yep.
where it's just like, yeah, they can just get me. If you just put a little cute creature in the show, I will fall in love. So very fun
Yeah,
with
add Neil
Neil.
to the list of
Yeah.
iconic, cute Star Wars characters.
So then you have the flip side of them, which you have the girls' counterparts, because they're kind of like these like pairs of friends. And so you
Mhm.
also have Fern and KB. And we'll start with Fern. When I have to say, I am not exactly like Fern as a child, but my mom was a principal and for a while was the vice
Mm.
principal of the school I went to. And when she gives like her child, like, hey, you got head of the class, you get your button. I remember when I would get good grades in school and people would be like, well, you only got it because your mom's the principal. I was like, that's not
Oh,
true. That's not true. I worked very hard for my good grades. So I'm instantly loving Fern, and then Fern's rebellion to be like, actually, I'm just gonna be a pod racer. I'm just gonna
right.
race.
I just wanna race my bike around. Yeah, no, I thought Fern was hilarious. Like, there's this, Sinister is a little strong, but just like, that prankster energy, but the charisma and the guts to go for some of these schemes. You know, we see it when she's just messing with Wim, but also later it becomes a plot point with her becoming captain. You know, she's
Right.
really got this gumption and almost audaciousness about her that I think is really good. And the actress who's playing her, I think, is really good at just creating this like charismatic, yet also you can tell there's some I don't know if brokenness is the right word, but yeah, just the relationship with her mom, you can tell is strained, and I'm intrigued by it. I'm intrigued by her as a character, and I like that the show didn't just have it be the Stranger Things. There's this gang of kids that's all friends already. You know, there was the tension between the two pairs in the discovery in the forest, and it feels a little more authentic in a way that these two pairs have somehow stumbled into each other and are now on this journey together versus like, you know, oh, the gang's all here riding their bikes. I don't know, like to your point about doing something familiar but different. I did appreciate that they didn't try to force it to be like the four best friends are doing this thing. You know, it's maybe the trailers made me expect that, so I was pleasantly surprised. But I did appreciate that it was more of the duality of the pairs there.
I mean, what I think will work about that is that you have to assume that over the course of the show that they will start to work together, ultimately realize they'll get frustrated by each other, and then hopefully have to overcome that. I don't mean to spoil the whole show. I don't actually know what happens, but it does feel like there's like even between Wim and Neil, you can see where they might have some tension and
Mhm.
conflict. And then you have, and I think too between Fern and then this other character KB, who just seems to be sort of like the tech whiz. Remember, she wears these super sleek glasses. Is the one to able to like sort of start to figure out how to get the ship running, how to follow where the power would be kept and turn on. I do think this dynamic is really good, and I agree with you. I'm much happier that they are not just like four friends who've been friends forever. I think it was really
Mhm.
smart to like separate them into pairs, and have the two, and it like it's very cute in the way that like when Fern is like, "Well, you guys can be our employees," and Neil's like, "Okay," it's like, "No, no,
Yeah,
no, no,
it's like,
no,
"No,
Neil." Yeah, it's very
stop,
fun.
stop, you're caving too easily." Yeah, I loved it, and yeah, KB seems to be, um, I don't like, the most capable in a way, just with their knowledge of all this stuff and, like, their cool, visor, glasses, whatever the situation is there, and I like that their motives are different. You know, Wim is off on an adventure, whereas KB and Fern they were trying to get into the ship for practical reasons to get a power converter for their bike so they can race the jerk kid down the street or whatever. So I'm curious to see how it goes. Like, I wonder if in future episodes, you know, it'll be the, you know, splitting up of the pairs and KB and Wim will be together and Fern and Neil will be together. And we'll just see how that goes. But yeah, I'm into it. And I think the actors like sometimes with kid actors, you know, it's just like it can be hit or miss. You know, obviously it's a huge undertaking for these children to like have to play another person. I'm sure like that is impossibly difficult when you don't have a sense of self quite yet. And so I found them to be it didn't feel like they were playing just like a trope or like you could feel that there is some like depth to the characters that the kids are trying to take on. And I appreciated that for sure.
Um, Ravi Cabot Conyers plays Wim. He does have some acting. He was a voice actor in Encanto, along with some other stuff.
Mm.
The girl who plays Fern, Ryan Kira Armstrong, has quite the incredible filmography, Owen. And I think you could see where they were looking for somebody who has a little bit of like you talked about before. She's not like arrogant. She's a little bit like rebellious and confident, I would say. But let me just
Hmm.
like run through some of her acting credits and see if there's a reason why they might have been able to find this performance out of her. She was in It Chapter 2. She was in
Ooh.
Firestarter, the Stephen King movie, which wasn't great, but she was quite good in it. And she was a main cast member of American Horror Story, Red Tide.
Oh,
I
geez.
feel I feel
Oh my
like
god.
I feel like you could see where they were like, we need a kid with edge. Like we need a. She's been in this all these horror movies.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Um.
Got some
o-
chops.
Okay. Let's talk about like basically everything that happens up until the point they get in the spaceship. So we basically like we've talked mostly about it, but basically this assessment day test that Wim has not studied for. He has to go back the next day and do it. He has to get 100% or he'll fail because he was late for his first one. Fern, pod racing, all of the events that lead up. And as I said, like suburban Star Wars, I quite loved it. I thought it was like so fun. I thought it was just excellent. Like the school scenes where kids are speaking different languages and yet like then someone respond back and is like, speaking in I just thought the whole thing was just delightful.
I agree. That's a perfect word for it. I was just like, "Oh my gosh, like what are they doing?" But it worked. Like it just felt authentic, and it's like I guess this is what a town would be like on a planet in Star Wars that is like, not Tatooine. Getting to see like a subdivision in Survivor was, or not Survivor. Sorry, it's always on the brain in Star Wars.
Uh-huh.
Cool. Sorry, and just quick aside, if my audio is bad, it's because I'm here for the live show in Houston.
That's
So
right.
Survivor's very on the brain. But
Yeah.
anyway, a Star Wars subdivision. It was just so cool to see. And yeah, like the droids running the school and just like how to the point and like, come along, children, get off the bus, go to class. Like it just felt like I could see it all. It all made sense. It all made sense to me. So yeah, I thought the world building was great and it felt immersive and natural, I would say.
So one piece of this that I did not realize at the beginning, I mean, it's definitely in there. You have as Wendell, Wim's dad, is talking about how the spaceship has left. They're like, no, nobody can go past the barrier. That's breaking protocol. This idea eventually we're going to find out in episode 2 about Old Republic credits. Is at Atten a thing that was on your radar? Because it certainly was not on my radar as like Star Wars lore. And I'm sure people who have done, I've basically like watched a bunch of the stuff and a lot of it I've only ever watched once. So this is like I've never done like a deep dive as far as I haven't read a lot of the other novels or things like that they've like kind of taken and used stuff. So I really have like, I feel like every season somebody's like, can't wait for this character to show up. And I'm like, I guess that's a character in the Star Wars lore that you're excited to show up. I don't know them.
Yeah,
Is this new territory for you as well, Owen?
it is, yeah. I'm not into the novels, and my one big blind spot with Star Wars media is the Clone Wars, and I know that was obviously way before this, but yeah, no, it was not something to my knowledge. So I'm curious where it goes, like if this is a new idea that they're playing with. But I think the concept is a fascinating one because you're in this post rebellion, new republic kind of situation, and it's very feasible that there could be some like vestiges and some like political structures that have not adapted, and it opens the door for a lot of questions of like what exactly is going on here. So I'm curious to see where it goes. But yeah, I was not familiar. I might need to hit up Wikipedia and see what people are saying.
Yeah, if folks want to, I mean, I'm pretty open to just like people direct me. I have done Clone Wars, but then I feel like I'm regretting not having done Rebels because I think that maybe, although I guess that's also a
Mm.
different time period as well. Because where we are is we're like in between basically the original movie series and the new movie series. I believe people can correct me if that's wrong. We're set at the same time as the Mandalorian, and I guess my question to you, Owen, is I think one thing about franchise IP that has been a little bit of a challenge to navigate is like Disney is not incentivized to say that this is or is not connected to anything else at the moment. And that's because they kind of want you to assume that it might be so that you'll watch it. If it doesn't end up mattering, it doesn't matter. You've watched the show. If it does end up mattering, they obviously want that to be the case. And so I guess my question to you is like, we'll eventually get into the specifics of what's happening in this show and how you think it could be connected. But my initial question is like, do you want this to be connected? Because I feel like when people were saying, um, asking me, should I watch the show? There was almost a sense of relief when I would be like, I don't think it's necessarily going to be connected to anything. I don't know that we will see Baby Grogu or Mandalorian in the show, but there is a world where if it's successful, have they put in breadcrumbs for the way in which, like, are we going to see Jude Law's character in the Mandalorian movie? Like, I
Mm.
don't know the answer to the question, but my question to you is not so much like, will we? It's like, do you want that to be the case? And I'd be interested from the audience as well in the comments, but from you, Owen, like, do you want this to be connected or you do not want it to be connected?
That's a good question. And I think my gut reaction is I do not. Like, I agree with what you were saying. Like there was a sense of relief where it's like I didn't have to do any homework to be ready for this, other than just watch the show. Like not to dunk on Marvel too much, but I personally have gotten a little tired with needing to watch 6 movies and 2 seasons of a TV show before I watch the next Marvel product that comes out. And I'm like pretty well versed in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but it's just like, oh, there's an Easter egg from episode 2 of WandaVision in this movie. So it's like it's a little exhausting, and I don't know if that's the right word, but there is a sense of relief. And if it opens it up in the future, that's great. But like having like I think there's also some part of me that like gets a little annoyed when I feel like an idiot for not knowing that, oh, you should expect Bo Katan to show up right here. Like, how you fool? How could you not know that that was coming? You know, I like it's almost like it's like, am I a bad Star Wars fan? Like, I don't know. There's probably some insecurity in that as well, but I think it's more enjoyable if it is just like a little more self-contained myself.
Yeah, I do feel like sometimes when I end up watching some, like I get really hung up on this. I think Star Wars actually did one of the things that I hated the most out of anything, which is when they put 2 episodes of The Mandalorian in the Book of Boba Fett. I was extremely
Mhm.
annoyed by this. And to be honest,
Yes.
it didn't really impact me. All I was mad about was like some fictitious person I had made up who like goes back to watch The Mandalorian. It's like, I think I'm missing context. And I'm like, oh, you
Right,
gotta go watch Book
right,
of Boba Fett. But for me, who watches that all of it, it didn't matter to me. Um, I often do feel like that there's the chance that if we were not so in the like in the media ecosystem bubble, like I think even you being on Blue Sky is indicative of like a level of fandom that is more, and that you're willing to do a podcast on Star Wars is a level to which like I wonder whether people like actually go to watch these things, and that actually if you just watch them on their own without having seen something prior, that the show would end up like, it's not like they're not gonna want to like you might miss this, like if somebody's showing up and it's like, I don't know this person, and it turns out they were in some other show that aired. Like I definitely think even though the Acolyte got canceled, I don't see how they don't use Manny Jacinto in something else
right,
in the future, because he was just
right.
so good.
It was great.
Other than the fact that it was like from a long time ago. So, but I think there is like a prequel movie trilogy
They can
coming
put him
that
in
I
a bacta tank or something and then figure it out. They did that in Jedi Survivor, the video game. It'll be fine. They'll
right.
figure out a way.
Right. So then in that case, like, and then I don't think that like when you when you see him, that they won't do any work to be like, this is who this guy is. They're not just going to assume, because I think that they realize this too, that if there's so much content there, you can't assume, yes, everybody who's going to watch this movie has watched The Acolyte, right? Especially a show that they canceled after 1 season. So my feeling behind this is, I agree with that. I would give the thumbs down. I agree that, they should have given that more of a leash.
100%.
My feeling is that like my instinct right now is like what is happening on At Atten. So I think if you look at the adult characters that they've cast in the show, which is Carrie Condon and Jude Law, um, those are people that I think they would be kind of foolish that if they could use them somewhere else, they should use them somewhere else. So I think that the kid storyline here is not something I expect to be like their journey continues on in something else. I do think that there's a high likelihood that like whatever story is happening here in terms of like, why is Ad Atten a hidden planet? Why Jude Law is involved? Carrie Condon's character, what is her responsibility to being there? This is stuff that I think could like carry over, but that this like central story that we're dealing with, I don't think is something we're gonna. I would hope this will
Yeah,
be very
time will
self-contained.
tell.
Yeah.
We'll
Um,
see. We'll see.
All right. Well, the kids get through. I loved the scene where they're playing around on the spaceship. I think it is a little. My one small nitpick that I feel like I have to like throw away is it took one button to start the spaceship and
Right,
fly it into
right.
hyperspace.
Right, and you see, like, on the Millennium Falcon, there's a startup sequence or, like, all these things, like, it's just a blinking green button, and I did love it, though, where it's like, he's like, "I'm not gonna touch anything, I swear," and we've all been the kid who's, like, playing with the windows in the car or the radio
Yeah,
or something, you just wanna push the button. You can't not push the button.
that I feel like is going to be a running theme because it happens again where they're like, "Don't push this button," and then they all like look at it. He's like, "I wasn't gonna push the button." um, So they head into hyperspace. I thought the scene where it lifts out. I thought there was two very cool action sequences in the first episode, which is the pirate spaceship boarding to find one credit,
Mhm.
and then the scene where the spaceship lifts up out of the ground and goes. And I actually really liked that Wim was not like, later, Dad. Like, I'm out of here. I liked that he was like,
Yeah,
he's a kid. He was like,
he's
Dad, like,
scared.
like help.
Help!
Yeah.
What am I doing? Yeah, I'm about to fly away. Yeah, no, I agree. I thought the action was great, and we kind of buried the lead also with we haven't even talked about Smee yet, the droid first mate of their ship that they found underground, and that was so good. Such great character design. They've been killing it with the droids lately in Star Wars. K2SO so good. BB-8 obviously,
Yeah.
and then in the game in Jedi Survivor, I love the droid in the game whose name I'm blanking on right now, but I just loved it. And then of course, well, like it being named SM-33, it's a little on the nose, but I just love that they're leaning into it, with the Peter Pan and the Treasure Island and just the visuals of the pirates being woven in. It's just it just makes me giddy in a way. So yeah, I love it.
Can I tell you, I did not realize that it's a Peter Pan reference. So there
Ah,
you go. There you go. Yeah, I think yeah, Smee, that's very clever. This is voiced by Nick Frost, one of my favorite actors.
mhm.
You would know him from the Cornetto trilogy, which is Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and World's End. Just talking about those movies earlier this week. It's kind
Oh,
of delight
love
to
them. Yeah.
see Nick Frost here, and I really loved. So this is very funny. It's a rat that pops out of his eye a bunch, and eventually you do see that one rat becomes very close friends with Neil, and it's notorious that it's normally elephants do not like mice. They're afraid of mice.
Oh, I didn't see that. I didn't think of that. That's
Pretty-
clever.
It is.
Look at
I
him
think it's.
go.
See, you recognize that it was me, and I was like, elephant and mice.
I think that's a point in your favor, though, for sure, Grace.
No, the Smee one I think is much cleverer. That's very fun. I think I do think that this is a very fun thing that the show is going to play with all these like, yeah, these tropes and sort of these Easter eggs in there. So that's very fun. I did love Smee waking up and Fern deciding to pretend to be the captain. Wim being like, I wanted to be the captain is such perfect for their dynamic in terms of who's actually in charge around here.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite lines of dialogue where Smee then says to Wim, it's like, you may challenge the captain to a fight to the death. And Wim's like, I'm good. No, thank you. I'm fine. It's
Uh,
awesome.
uh, okay, so we're gonna go to Port Borgo. Great name. What did you make of everything that happens in Port Bogo? Borgo.
I love
Bogo.
it. Felt
Borgo.
very Star Wars, the CD cantina and all these, shady characters and a bustling, kind of back alley type of vibes there. I loved that the woman who was working at one of the bars spotted the kids and was extremely concerned for them. That felt realistic and that there
I
would
think it
be
might have
some
been more
concern
than a
there.
bar. Oh, and
Yes, I didn't want to presume her line of work, but sex work is real work, and
yeah, agreed.
Star Wars, pirates need adult entertainment as well. But yeah, she was looking out, but it was funny. Like I did get a smidge annoyed because the kids they've just arrived on this planet. They're trying to get directions to be able to get back to Ad Aden, and they're like, okay, stay together, and then immediately they split apart, and I'm like, why? But it's also like, oh yeah, they're children. They probably saw something shiny and like smelled something good and wanted to go investigate if there were snacks. Um, not to undersell the capacities of the kids, but it's also like, oh yeah, they are kids lost in this new place and like they would wander off. Like that is very believable in a sense.
Yeah, I quite enjoyed this. You have basically the woman getting KB and Fern together. You also have the boys trying to buy some food. All of them trying to figure out how to get home and immediately realize like nobody thinks that Ad Aden is can be found. That these kids are lying to the adults. That is a myth that was told. I totally agree. This was such great like costume set design, prosthetic work. It like even if a lot of this might have been CGI, it really felt like sort of like a lot of prosthetic work as well. It's probably mostly a combo, and probably it actually has a lot of CGI. But I just thought it looked quite incredible.
Mhm.
Like every creature, every person they were meeting in this in the port just looked different and strange and so interesting.
Mhm.
And yeah, and then the other piece here is that they're gonna Wim has all these old Republic credits that his dad gave him. And I kind of love this as they get eventually get taken into the brig. I did love this like kind of this to me again felt very like kid adventure and also like D&D adventure of like we have all this money but what could you actually do with it, where like Wim's like we'll just pay to get out, and it's like they'll just steal your money, you idiot. All of this I thought was like very very fun and interesting and compelling to see, and we don't even really, this is where we end the episode is them basically I guess they have the key to escape but they're still there.
Yeah, they're stuck on the ship in the brig with Jude Law's character, who, in the opening sequence, I guess we didn't fully explain. I guess he was leading a pirate crew to steal a large sum of credits, but they get there and there's none there. So I guess it seems his crew has turned on him, and now he's locked in the brig. And then he shows the kids that he can use the Force, and the episode ends with Wim like, "You're a Jedi," and I don't know, Grace. What do you think? Do you think he's a Jedi? Do you think he's a survivor of Order 66? Do you think he, left the Jedi Order to seek a life of piracy? Do you think he just happens to be a Force user who, can do a couple tricks? Like, well, what do you think is the prevailing theory here?
um I'm of two minds. One is if you have a character being like all I want to ever do is be a Jedi, it feels like then you pair him up with the Jedi, but
Hmm.
that could be a red herring in the sense that like Jude Law's character is not a Jedi. That it eventually Wim will meet somebody else. Um, I guess because we're before the new, and people should correct me if I'm wrong about that. I am right about this, right? These are like technical, like Mando and everything is set before the new movies. Is that
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, I guess whether or not he's a Jedi like officially, or he's just a Force, like he never was and there was a Force user. I'm not sure which one I lean more towards. Do you have a feeling of whether he's a Jedi or not?
Well, to your point about wanting to pair Wim up with a Jedi, I think it might, like, from a story's perspective, lend this, like, he's got this googly eyed adoration for Jude Law's character. He's like, oh my gosh. And then it could set him up for disappointment or betrayal or whatever when he finds out, he's been lying about it. But the age of the character, I think I was reading this on Reddit or somewhere, but it lines up where he could have been a youngling that survived the attack on the Jedi Temple, like Grogu. Um, and he's just, made his way in the world, as a Force user, hiding and maybe breaking it out when necessary. That's I keep referencing the video games, Star Wars, Jedi Survivor, and then the one before that, I forget, Jedi whatever, the character there, Cal Kestis, who is a great character, great performance in the game. He was a Padawan who survived the Purge in Order 66. So I'm curious if they do that again. Like, I don't know if it's quote unquote like played out necessarily, but the age makes sense to where that could be feasible. So I don't know. We'll see where it goes, but I'm intrigued by it. I think that I hope we get. I don't know if I want like a full like flashback episode necessarily, but like I love the idea of someone who's Force sensitive being able to, rise to leadership in this like crew of scoundrels, with the Force being like their extra weapon that they have over these people. So I'm curious. I'm curious where it goes, but like you were alluding to, just the fact that it is Jude Law and such a, esteemed actor, and like, they're going to do big things with the character, and I'm curious where it goes.
Yeah, I think for me, I think I've bought into what you're saying, which is that this idea that because the last line is, "Can you keep a secret?" He basically implies that he's a Jedi, but I don't think I think whether or not he was a Jedi, like he was a youngling or not, I think is different than what he considers himself to be now, which I think he would say he's not a Jedi or he can't be a Jedi. And I do feel like this idea that we're gonna have this moment later in the season where Wim is like, "But you said you were a Jedi." He's like, "I never said I was a Jedi, kid." Basically, I think that probably
You
is the
said
exact.
that, yeah.
If that line comes up in the show, just know I'm not actually on the writing team of the show. But yeah, that feels like pretty likely, and the fact that he has been on the run as a youngling and then finds himself, doing piracy, and I'm mostly interested in like what and then it does feel like if he's now just if it's just as simple as like they attacked the ship, there was one credit, his crew mutinies against him, they throw him in the jail. He does have force, he can use the force, and then he hears about, oh my god, these kids are going to get me to Atten is like the one thing that like restore my pirate reputation. Is pretty fun, and all the way along, him thinking I'm doing this to restore my pirate reputation, while also maybe
Mm,
learning that like, oh, actually maybe like there's another path for me, back. That to me kind of feels a little bit like where we might be going. So
I
um,
like it.
either way, that's pretty fun. Um, I quite like it. Do you have a theory about Atten? Like it to me, it feels like this is setting up like, I know in the movies we get like somehow Palpatine returned. Um, but this feel like, do you have a theory about Atten, about like what this thing is? Who's like, I feel like there's people in the chat who already will be like, I know exactly what this is. I really have no idea
I have
what
no idea
Atten is.
either, and
Yeah,
it's from the way they were speaking about it on the, at the spaceport and whatnot, it seems to be this kind of like El Dorado, like myth, treasure planet, like something of legend. So I'm curious if they're I don't know how deep down the rabbit hole they will go, but there seems to be potential for like some political, nefariousness and like hiding the planet and like, the whole blockade of it and or the barrier, whatever they called it. Um, but there's something afoot with the government and how that planet is being run, to where they aren't part of the overarching universe galaxy and interacting with other planets in a way that a planet should. So there's something to unravel there, but that would tonally change the show. I think maybe too much to make it be this like political, you know, pulling the rope and seeing where it leads them kind of thing. So I am curious how they kind of weave that together. But yeah, I really liked your theory and your prediction of the, oh, this will restore me to pirate glory. I'll find the lost treasure. It's like Pirates of the Caribbean, being able to
100%.
find the chest or whatever. And yeah, I'm into it though. But I should have looked it up before, but I think this might be a new um, idea. Like I don't know if it's been mentioned in any other Star Wars media before.
Okay, well that's yeah, it's very funny. Yeah, it does seem like on Reddit there's a lot of like a theory about Atten, which to me probably says like if the first searches were coming up being like, more vague, I think that you would probably assume like people can really know what this is, rather than this is something that they're probably people are trying to figure out what it's connected to. So that's pretty fun. If you do know what I would say in terms of like theories or things like that, because it does seem, I feel like they've set up a couple of mysteries so far. If you know for sure, please don't just like say you know it for sure. Like, please don't spoil us on the show. Happy to entertain theories. And even if you know the real thing and want to couch it as a theory, please do that. Just try not to like spoil us directly on what's happening. I feel like I want to go and play the video games based on how much you've talked about them. I have not played Fallen Order or Jedi Survivor, so I might have to
Oh,
check
highly,
those
highly
out.
recommend. They're great.
I've
Yeah,
heard
they're
those. I
really
heard that
fun.
they're really good. Anything else from this episode? Owen, did we miss anything?
I don't think so. The one thing I almost brought up earlier, but the fight sequence at the spaceport was Smee saving the day and just kicking some ass. Well, that was a point where I was like, oh wow! Like when he grilled one of the pirates' faces on the grill, I was like, oh,
Very
this is
good.
not a children's program. Like this is like they're really getting after it in this fight, and it was cool. And yeah, I just thought that it was choreographed. It was exciting. It was just like it felt very Star Wars, and I'm just giddy to have another Star Wars show to take in, and I think this has a lot of potential. I think there's a lot of directions it could go, and I really enjoyed talking with you about it, and just like kind of zooming out a little and seeing how it might fit into the whole um, universe of the new kind of Disney Star Wars era. And yeah, and I mean, not to totally pivot to Acolyte, but just definitely want to say again, like how disappointing it was that that got canceled because that was just I thought that had a ton of potential. I think just the whole culture war of it all ended up prevailing to the dark side there, and it's ridiculous in my opinion. And but yeah, shout out to Manny Jacinto because he killed it in that, and the choreography, the fights in that show were great, and it's a shame, but I'm optimistic that people seem to have taken to Skeleton Crew, and it's gotten good reviews so far. So I think no, did I make up that they've greenlight? No, no, no. I made that up about a season 2 of this, but just the fact that they're still chugging along and they're not, they're still creating more content. I'm happy to have it because that was a disappointing taste in my mouth after the end of the Acolyte for sure.
I do think the thing about the Acolyte, I think it was I feel like we can really feel when a show gets a little bit handcuffed in terms of what they can do depending on when it's set. And Acolyte feels like one that they shouldn't have been because they were so in the past that it felt like they shouldn't be like restricted on the story that they can
Right.
do.
They could open up so much, yeah.
And yet they couldn't. And so I really liked The Acolyte. I thought some episodes were obviously much stronger than others, but I was really excited by what they were going to do. I thought some of the ideas in that show were good. I know someone like Taryn felt like almost like feeling bad about criticizing it because he wanted to make sure he's separating that, like his genuine critique of the show from the culture war stuff that was happening with that show. At the same time, it does seem like the biggest reason the Acolyte was canceled was because of cost per episode. It was very expensive to make. And I feel like a Star Wars show can't really be cheap to make, but I wonder if maybe this,
what they expect.
Yeah, I wonder if this, this show looks to have been made for each episode is about $17 million. It's which is more than Obi-Wan and Ahsoka. So they have not announced a renewal yet. I'm hoping the reception to this indicates that we could get a renewal. And typically what you'll see is like, if it is popular enough, we should probably get a renewal at some point during either early in the season. So like right before the next episode drops or right before the finale or right after the finale. Those are kind of like the places where we might get word of a renewal, but we shall see. The other thing is whether or not Jude Law would do more of this as
I hope
well.
so.
But, yeah.
I love him. Yeah.
Yeah, he's very good. All right, well, that's episodes 1 and 2, which I didn't name. They have, I think the name, this could be a real adventure, and then way, way out past the barrier are the names of the episodes, which I think are just kind of delightful little names. Owen, do you have anything else going on? Do you want to plug anything?
Not much, just doing some podcasts with RHAP for Survivor. I'm doing the Houston live show tonight, so go back and watch that. Use your little time machine whenever this comes out. And no, I'm just living life. It's been a month of marriage for me, so Sammy and I are just in wedded bliss now. And
yes, congratulations.
Thank you so much. And just enjoying, being a fan again and staying involved in RHAP, and it's just been fun. But yeah, I'm on Blue Sky now, the Young Knight over there, the Young Knight on Instagram. I'm phasing myself out of Twitter. I find that my headspace gets way more negative over there. It's just the energy is just so much better on Blue Sky, I've found. So yeah. Oh, and I guess I will plug the RHAP Blood on the Clock Tower and also Dwight Moore's streams for Clock Tower, because those have been really fun, and I think we're gonna keep churning out more episodes. So keep your eyes out for that.
Okay, it's very good. There's lots going on We Know Scripted TV, including the Tastemakers recaps of Dune Prophecy, as well as Silo. We're doing a Severance rewatch.
Let's go.
Yeah, that's Josh, Amanda, and Melissa. The doctors are in session doing the Severance rewatch for that coming back in the new year. So we'll be back next week with another Star Wars Skeleton Crew episode. Make sure you're subscribed. This will have 8 episodes in total, so 7 more weeks of you and I chatting, Owen, which I'm very excited about. So until next time, bye-bye.